You are listening to the It's Logical podcast, Episode 4, Ancient Alien Visitors. In the ancient world, from the desert sands of Egypt to the rugged highlands of the Andes, extraordinary monuments and puzzling artifacts have captured our collective imagination. Could it be that these colossal stone structures, precise astronomical alignments, and feats of engineering were guided by visitors from another world? For decades, the idea of alien explorers arriving in antiquity has inspired television programs, best-selling books, and countless discussions around the globe. Yet, as compelling as these narratives might be, one fundamental question remains. Is there any real, tangible evidence to suggest that extraterrestrial beings once walked among our distant ancestors? When we peer into the vast repository of human myths and folklore, we find an abundance of tales describing luminous gods descending from the heavens, mysterious chariots traversing the skies, and cosmic battles fought with unimaginable power. In modern times, we spin yarns of wormhole travel, star-hopping civilizations, and advanced interstellar ships. Are our present-day science fiction stories any more valid as proof of real visitors than ancient mythologies? Throughout history, human beings have excelled at weaving gripping narratives, stories that reflect our awe of the unknown, our spiritual yearnings, and the mysteries lurking just beyond our grasp. But imagination, as potent as it is, does not by itself constitute hard evidence of alien intervention. Consider the enduring appeal of ancient astronaut theory, which posits that aliens descended upon Earth in epochs long past, bestowing wisdom and advanced technology upon our supposedly primitive ancestors. For many, the notion sparks a captivating alternative history. Perhaps the pyramid builders had cosmic blueprints, or the architects of mysterious stone circles were taught geometry by emissaries from the stars. This theory gains traction partly because it attempts to fill in gaps where our historical record is incomplete, or where the scale of ancient achievement seems to defy ready explanation. Who wouldn't be enthralled by the notion that behind every forgotten ruin, an otherworldly presence lingers, hidden in cryptic carvings and secret tombs? Yet time and again we see that these assertions struggle under scholarly scrutiny. Archaeologists routinely unearth evidence indicating that our ancestors possessed the intelligence and ingenuity to develop the technologies they needed to accomplish whatever they set their minds to. The building of massive architectural complexes or advanced machinery was not an overnight revelation dropped from the sky, but rather the product of iterative experimentation, the exchange of ideas between civilizations, and that timeless spark of human creativity. In short, the achievements of the ancient world are often best explained by human hands, guided by a fundamental need for innovation, rather than by the presence of beings from another galaxy. But why then do so many remain convinced that extraterrestrials must have been involved? One factor lies in the disarming grandeur of certain archaeological wonders. Look at the pyramids of Giza, magnificent in their scale and precision, or cast your eyes to Stonehenge, where colossal stones from distant quarries stand in alignment with celestial events. When first confronted by these feats, one might ask, how did people with seemingly rudimentary tools manage such feats of engineering? It's a question that can spark flights of fancy. Perhaps an interplanetary civilization, noticing our fledgling efforts, decided to lend a hand. However, when we delve deeper, we often discover that the simplest answer can also be the correct one. Through painstaking labor, rigorous organization, resources harnessed from the immediate environment, and a driving cultural or religious imperative, ancient societies found ways to accomplish tasks that modern observers, without context, might deem impossible. Think, for example, of the Roman Empire, where technology and engineering soared to astonishing heights for the era. The Romans devised concrete that grew stronger over time, built aqueducts that spanned miles, and constructed a system of roads so advanced that sections are still in use today. In Hellenistic Alexandria, the mathematician and engineer Hero designed devices that used steam or compressed air to open temple doors. Some historians even talk of rudimentary robots in Rome, mechanical inventions capable of simple tasks like pouring wine. Fans of the ancient alien hypothesis sometimes leap to the conclusion that such devices must be the product of advanced knowledge trickling down from an off-world source. But the reality is far more straightforward. In places where the need arose and resources were available, human ingenuity flourished. We also see the skill and resourcefulness of ancient civilizations in places like the Andes Mountains of South America, where the Inca Empire, perched among soaring peaks, constructed the breathtaking citadel of Machu Picchu. The site's tiered terraces, fit for specialized agriculture, testify to an intimate understanding of hydrology and the environmental challenges of mountainous terrain. Gigantic stones, shaped to fit so precisely that one cannot slip a sheet of paper between them, have fueled rampant speculation about alien technologies or laser-like cutting tools. But researchers have shown that, with patience and skill, stonemasons could shape rocks by strategically chipping away at edges, measuring and refining, and using the friction of other stones to grind surfaces. All this can be done without calling upon extraterrestrial intervention. And what of Stonehenge itself? The ancient builders carted massive sarsen stones and smaller blue stones across considerable distances, placing them in a circular formation that aligns with the solstice sunrises and sunsets. The arrangement demonstrates that prehistoric people were not only physically capable of transporting enormous stones using sleds, rollers, and the combined effort of many hands, but they were also deeply invested in understanding seasonal changes. For a community reliant on agriculture, marking the solstices was more than a symbolic fancy. It was a matter of survival. From this perspective, Stonehenge ceases to be an unexplainable anomaly, requiring alien assistance, and instead becomes a witness to human willpower, collaboration, and astronomical observation. Throughout the millennia, humans have consistently turned to the sky for inspiration and meaning. Ancient societies spoke of gods who descended from celestial realms. Today, we write about futuristic aliens who might do the same. Such parallels can be striking, but they do not by default prove that visitors from other planets actually landed on Earth in times gone by. Rather, they underscore a shared trait across cultures and eras. We are drawn to the heavens. We look upward, we dream, we speculate, and we craft narratives that help us cope with, or sometimes transcend, the limitations of our immediate world. The question arises: does the absence of conclusive evidence for alien visitation automatically rule it out? Strictly speaking, no. One cannot prove a negative. There could always be hidden artifacts we haven't unearthed or cosmic footprints we haven't recognized for what they truly are. Yet the same logic applies to many claims on the fringes of science. We can't say with absolute certainty that something never happened, only that the preponderance of evidence does not support that it did. Most experts, from archaeologists to historians, rely on Occam's razor. Rather than invoke alien visitors, they choose explanations rooted in well-documented human capacity, creativity, and historical context. For instance, proponents of the ancient astronaut theory often point to depictions of strange headgear in ancient carvings or mention mythic references to sky chariots, proposing these as proof that advanced beings arrived wearing space helmets or traveling in rocket-like vehicles. However, symbolic analysis consistently reveals cultural and religious context behind these depictions. Gods were shown wearing elaborate crowns, plumes, or stylized headdresses to illustrate power, spiritual significance, or their domain over nature. Myths about sky chariots can reflect spiritual journeys or metaphors for cosmic processes, not literal mechanical craft ferrying alien passengers. In India's vast corpus of Sanskrit epics, for example, the fabled Vimanas, flying machines described in ancient texts, are frequently highlighted by those searching for evidence of cosmic influences. Yet scholars of Sanskrit literature point out that these stories, while brimming with vibrant detail, exist primarily in a mythological or religious framework. They serve moral, philosophical, or symbolic functions within their cultural context. To treat them as eyewitness accounts of alien technology is akin to regarding modern science fiction novels as historical documents. Granted, if we regard the persistent references to sky beings and flying contraptions as imaginative leaps, we risk missing the deeper cultural meaning these stories once held. But conflating narrative traditions with literal historical events can be equally misleading. In the process, the ancients' brilliant tapestry of metaphor and religious thought is often stripped away, replaced by a narrow attempt to force the text into alignment with a preferred modern theory. Nowhere is this tension more apparent than in popular media, which frequently recycles sensational claims while providing little more than cursory nods to the rigorous scholarship that undercuts them. An imposing megalithic wall, where stones are fitted together without mortar, is shown while ominous music plays in the background, hinting that it's beyond human ability. Then, with dramatic flair, the narrative asks, could this be the handiwork of ancient extraterrestrials? The question lingers in the viewer's mind long after the program ends, sowing doubt about the capacity of ancient societies. Yet the mechanics of megalithic building, while daunting, have been demonstrated on smaller scales in experimental archaeology projects. Engineers and volunteers replicate aspects of the construction techniques using wooden sleds, ropes, ramps, and an incredible amount of manpower. While these feats are laborious, pushing the limits of pre-modern logistics, they are not magical, nor do they require otherworldly powers. Equally important is recognizing that lost knowledge and cultural exchange both played huge roles in the development of ancient technology. Many ancient empires, from the Mayan to the Mesopotamian, rose to prominence through vibrant trade networks, importing and exporting ideas as well as goods. Techniques like metal smelting, advanced stone carving, or mechanical gear construction spread across regions. Cities rose, flourished, and sometimes fell, leaving behind partial records. Because of this patchwork survival of artifacts and writings, certain achievements appear suddenly, as though they materialized from nowhere. In truth, the underlying processes often stretched over centuries, long enough for states to fund massive projects, gather resources, and refine their methods. The Roman Empire, for example, did not create sophisticated aqueduct systems out of sheer happenstance. They were building on knowledge gleaned from earlier societies, refining it, scaling it up, and applying it to their vast territory. This is how innovation has always thrived in human civilizations. One generation expands upon the achievements of another. If Rome's grand infrastructure seems astoundingly advanced, it is because it arose in a context of intense cultural, economic, and political development. Suggesting that aliens stepped in to lay out those perfect arches and channels undervalues the step-by-step progress that characterizes all of human history. Another point often highlighted by ancient alien enthusiasts is the presence of out-of-place artifacts, objects that some claim could not have been produced by the civilizations that made them. The Antikythera mechanism, discovered among a shipwreck near Greece, is often cited as a piece of technology centuries ahead of its time. And indeed, it does exhibit an intricacy that might surprise us, containing geared systems that track planetary motions. However, historical records show us that Hellenistic science was advanced enough to conceive of precise astronomical calculations, and this device is a testament to the learned curiosity that pervaded the era. Its rarity and complexity do not demand an alien blueprint. Instead, they highlight how much knowledge we may have lost over centuries of upheavals and library burnings. Consider, too, the Baghdad Battery, a curious clay vessel with an iron rod and copper cylinder that some have argued might have functioned as a galvanic cell. While debate continues over its original purpose, the mere possibility that it generated an electrical current does not point to extraterrestrial interference. Quite possibly, ancient people discovered, by trial or experiment, a method that could produce a mild electric shock or help with electroplating metals. Just because it seems extraordinary to our eyes does not mean it must have come from beyond Earth. Such discussions invariably raise the topic of necessity as the driver of invention. If our ancient ancestors had a pressing need, for example, a method to measure time accurately, a way to store water efficiently in arid conditions, or a desire to track celestial cycles to plan agricultural rituals, they would pool their knowledge and resources to solve the problem. The synergy between need and creativity is a core pillar of human history. Whenever we are pressed by conditions to innovate, we look for solutions. Ancient societies were no different, even if their problem-solving methods might strike us as unusual, or their technology less streamlined than ours. To attribute their creative leaps to alien guidance sometimes does more than just discount human brilliance. It perpetuates a narrative that certain cultures, often outside of Europe, were too primitive to have achieved wonders on their own. This perspective can be insulting, as it diminishes the capacity and legacy of indigenous, African, Asian, and American civilizations, among others. It reduces their grand constructions and mechanical curiosities to puzzle pieces in an extraterrestrial riddle, rather than recognizing them as the rightful products of complex societies. This is not to suggest that curiosity about possible alien visits is in itself misguided. Space, after all, remains unimaginably vast, and the potential for life elsewhere is a topic of legitimate scientific inquiry. Astronomers debate the existence of exoplanets within habitable zones, and thinkers use the Drake equation to approximate the likelihood of intelligent life forming in distant star systems. But it is one leap to hypothesize that life might exist far from Earth, and quite another to assert that it specifically journeyed here eons ago and altered the course of human development, especially when all we have are interpretive readings of ancient texts, ambiguous carvings, or sensational documentary claims. If a technologically superior race of beings had come here in prehistory, it stands to reason we would find undeniable physical remnants of their visit: advanced metals, alloys we cannot replicate, or instrumentation that does not match any known pre-industrial technology. Some propose that these items might have been whisked away, lost, or destroyed. But given the thousands upon thousands of archaeological sites around the globe, it would be quite a cosmic coincidence if all direct evidence of alien presence had vanished beyond recognition. What we do continue to find instead are artifacts that align quite neatly with the local evolution of craft and industry. Even the beloved Nazca lines in Peru, gigantic geoglyphs etched into the desert, are sometimes called alien runways by those seeking evidence of extraterrestrial craft. In truth, more meticulous analysis suggests that they could have had religious or astronomical significance, possibly serving as pathways in ceremonial rites or as messages to deities who were believed to dwell above. Scans of the desert terrain show that creating the lines only required removing the top layer of darker rock to expose the lighter soil underneath, a technology well within the means of ancient peoples. This entire conversation circles back to the unavoidable fact that humans are storytellers. We love a grand narrative, whether it's a legend of gods bequeathing sacred gifts to mortals or a fictional epic about interstellar emissaries guiding humanity toward cosmic enlightenment. Our minds are wired to find patterns, to fill gaps, and to ascribe meaning to the inexplicable or the awesome. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. In fact, it's part of what makes us such a creative species. Yet when we treat ancient mythologies, or even modern science fiction, as objective historical records, we can wind up losing sight of the cultural, social, and religious nuances that gave rise to these stories in the first place. In many ways, modern enthrallment with ancient astronaut theory tells us as much about ourselves as about our ancestors. Our world is more interconnected than ever, yet massive swaths of our past remain mysterious. We yearn for revelations that might finally connect the dots, explaining how our species leaped from stone tools to complex societies capable of erecting structures that rival anything built today. Sometimes it's easier or more sensational to suggest that we had a cosmic boost, some blueprint from the stars, rather than accepting that cunning minds and strong communal bonds could accomplish wonders over decades, generations, or even centuries. Yet the real story of human development, if we look at it closely, is every bit as astonishing as any alien narrative. Over thousands of years, people domesticated wild grains, enabling agricultural surpluses. This, in turn, allowed for specialized labor and the emergence of large-scale societies. Social hierarchies formed, religions developed, and states vied for power. City-states evolved into kingdoms, which became empires. Along the way, mathematics, astronomy, writing systems, and engineering techniques flourished. cultures exchanged knowledge over land and sea, adopting and refining each other's innovations. The annals of human history are rife with wars, alliances, trade routes, lost knowledge, rediscovered knowledge, and leaps in insight spurred by need and competition. Look at the city planning of Mohenjo-Daro in the Indus Valley, or the complex road networks of the Inca, or the advanced maritime navigation of Polynesian voyagers who traversed the open Pacific using star charts encoded in their memory. Each example underscores that where there is will and necessity, there is progress, even in ages and regions we might casually label primitive. This ongoing collective endeavor is precisely what propels our species forward. Our curiosity about the possibility of alien life is natural, and indeed, if one day evidence emerges that we've been visited in the past, it would be a monumental revelation. But for now, the consistent findings in archaeology, anthropology, and history point not to cosmic interventions, but to the inexhaustible capacity of human innovation. In a sense, that might be even more awe-inspiring, the idea that we, with our own hands and minds, shaped these grand achievements. We overcame the constraints of environment and resources, building pyramids, forging intricate metals, mapping the stars, and constructing the cultural tapestries that underpin our modern world. And so, we come to a question for us today. Are we too quick to assume that certain accomplishments are beyond the scope of ancient intelligence and creativity? In many cases, the answer might be yes. By attributing megalithic sites or early mechanical wonders to extraterrestrials, we lose an opportunity to appreciate just how capable our ancestors were. Instead of seeking to fill in the blanks with otherworldly forces, we might do well to marvel at the unstoppable drive of a species that has always found a way to surpass its apparent limitations. This conversation isn't about suppressing our imaginations or denying the allure of cosmic possibilities. Whether we're dreaming of warp drives and terraforming other planets, or rummaging through ancient temple ruins in search of lost knowledge, we're exercising the same imaginative spirit that led our ancestors to chart the skies and experiment with mechanical contraptions. The difference is that we must distinguish between the joy of speculation and the quest for verifiable truth. Could it be? Is a fine place for a documentary to begin, but eventually we should arrive at, let's examine the evidence. When we do so, when we align stories and showmanship with the meticulous work of archaeology and historical analysis, we discover that we already have a profoundly rich tapestry of human achievements to explore. Time and again, that tapestry reveals itself to be woven from the threads of necessity, ingenuity, tradition, and cultural exchange. We see the massive pyramids stand as a testament to an empire's social structure, religious fervor, and engineering know-how. We see monolithic statues in distant islands or mountain citadels not as signs of otherworldly intervention, but as symbols of communal identity, spiritual devotion, or the desire to harness the environment in ingenious ways. True, we will always have gaps in our knowledge. Some aspects of the past remain elusive due to lost records or natural decay over thousands of years. Yet each year, new technologies such as LiDAR scanning, DNA analysis, and improved dating methods are shedding more light on these mysteries. If, in the future, we do encounter something truly inexplicable, an artifact, a site, or a text that cannot be understood within the confines of known human practice, then perhaps the conversation may evolve. But until that moment, the consensus among those who study our past is that ancient peoples were far from helpless or unimaginative. In fact, one of the hallmarks of humanity is our capacity to devise stories that reflect our ceaseless longing to connect with something greater than ourselves. Whether that greater thing is gods, cosmic travelers, or advanced civilizations in galaxies far away, it speaks to our deep-seated desire to transcend the ordinary. But a crucial distinction exists between seeking transcendence in myth, art, and culture, and grounding our conclusions about history in credible, well-substantiated evidence. At first glance, this might sound less glamorous than imagining alien architects descending to bestow blueprint scrolls to wide-eyed mortals. But if we take a step back, is it truly less inspiring to acknowledge that our ancestors, men and women with no outside help, accomplished wonders that still baffle us today? Could it be that our refusal to accept their ingenuity might rob them of the esteem they deserve? Perhaps it is even more astonishing to realize that the human mind has always been capable of feats that border on the miraculous, given the constraints of the era. Over time, as we continue exploring our past and looking for answers in dusty tombs or sun-scorched ruins, we might also reflect on the future. Will centuries from now produce theories that our own technological marvels, smartphones, gene editing, quantum computing, were assisted by unknown forces beyond our comprehension? If our successors lose the records of how we methodically arrived at these breakthroughs, they might be tempted to posit an otherworldly impetus as well. Yet we know these achievements arose from incremental scientific understanding, collaboration, and the impetus of necessity. In that sense, the saga of ancient astronaut theory may well be repeated in ages to come, with new names and new forms of speculation. But beneath it all lies a common thread: the exceptional drive of humankind to explore, innovate, build, and imagine. While we cannot entirely negate the possibility of alien visits, past or future, the best current evidence suggests that we, on our own, were perfectly capable of sculpting our monumental heritage. The real story, then, is that the human journey, with all its creativity and engineering prowess, remains an epic in its own right. By recognizing where fact ends and speculation begins, we can still indulge our cosmic daydreams without losing sight of how truly remarkable our ancestors were. After all, their legacy is still visible today in grand monoliths, sophisticated artifacts, and age-old myths that continue to fascinate us. These wonders remind us that we, too, carry the spirit of innovation, constantly seeking new frontiers, whether earthly or astronomical. If anything, that unquenchable curiosity is what might someday lead us to become the ancient aliens of another world, venturing across space to make first contact with a civilization that peers up at unfamiliar skies and wonders if someone, might be out there. But until that moment arrives, we can best honor the achievements of our forebears by acknowledging the astonishing truth. They needed no extraterrestrial intervention to create their marvels. Their brilliance, tenacity, and will to solve problems remain the cornerstones of civilization. And that, if we truly pause to consider it, might just be more awe-inspiring than any tale of cosmic visitors descending from the stars to tinker with our destiny.